Welcome to MC Knitting Adventures. My name is May.
And my name's Colleen. And today we have a special episode and we're doing a tutorial on how to make stitch markers and progress keepers.
So let's just get started.
The first stitch marker that we're going to make is one of the easiest ones to do. It just involves buying two separate things and putting them together. So what you need to get are some bulb pins, and I purchased these from Walmart. You can get them online, and when you get them online, you can get all different colors. And I know that May is always laughing because these are all over the house. It used to be when I was working in teaching school, it used to be paper clips, but now it's these bulb markers. But they're wonderful stitch markers, and if you want to dress them up, you can do so. In my container of bulb pins, there were some silver pins and there were also some black pins. Now today I'm just going to use the silver pins because if I'm working with a dark yarn, the black ones wouldn't work. But if I knew I was dealing with a light color of yarn, then I could make one with the black. So for right now, we're going to take those out of the picture and we're just going to go through. Now, what can you do with these pins? It depends on what you have. So if you go to your craft store, so Michael's, Joann's, Hobby Lobby, you can find these type of charms, is what they're called, in the jewelry section. And all you do is take one of those. Now this has a jump ring attached, and we'll talk a little bit more about jump rings. When I'm working with the bulb pins, that's not necessary, but it's there, so I'm going to use it. So I take the jump ring, and I'm going to open it up. And then all I have to do is slip the jump ring onto the bulb pin. When I put it on my knitting needle, it's going to sit like that. So this is nice and round. It's not going to catch on anything, so it should work really well. If I want to use this as something we call a progress keeper, I could do that and just pin it on the right side of my knitting, or I could knit it so I could see how far I'd gone from one day to the next. So that's the first one. Now the second one you can do is if you have charms, and these are charms that we got at something called Oasis Beads in St. Thomas. So the price of this were 10 pieces for 99 cents. It's a great deal. And these have the holes but no jump ring, and that's okay because when you're working with the bulb marker, once again, you just have to open it and then you slip that on. Now, the nice thing about these sheep is they're the same on both sides. And with the bulb stitch marker, it doesn't really matter. But once again, I can do that and put it on my knitting needle, and then we're in good shape. So those are the kinds of things that I can do if I'm going to use bulb pins, or they're also called gourd pins, depending. And once again, you can get all kinds of colors. I've got a lot of colors that I got on Amazon, and they work really well. You can get some that are metallic, you can get some that are just different colors, and decide what you want to make with those. So that's our first way of making a stitch marker. My second idea for stitch markers comes from, once again, the jewelry section. And we were in Joann's Fabrics and we found these, which are just circles. They were for making chains and necklaces and those kind of things. There was that color, and then there was this color. So what I did was I took those and I took off this part right here. I'll just point to it right there. And I took that off. It's not difficult to do. You can use one of these needle nose pliers. If you're going to get some needle nose pliers, just make sure that inside there's not any ridges. You have to be careful when you get them at a Canadian Tire, for instance, because those ridges will damage what you're working on. So I took this part off, and what I ended up with, big rings and little rings. So that's what we have. Now, there's two different ways you can do it. One is if there is already a jump ring on a charm. So I bought this set. It had 6 of those. and it already has a jump ring on it. I think that's probably about a 5mm jump ring. Now I have to open the jump ring on this so that I can do that. Now here is the important part of a jump ring. Now I'm going to choose one. I don't need one here, but I just want to show you. So I've got these in a little jar. I'm going to need it later anyway. When you're dealing with a jump ring, you have to open it up properly. So what you need to do is you take one side with one needle nose plier, the other side with the other one. And what you have to do is you just have to give it a twist. Okay? You don't want to take the jump ring and go like this and pull it open. You'll never get it to be a circle again. So I'm going to use that on the second one that I do, but what I just did with that is what I'm going to have to do here. So my job is to find the opening in this one. There it is. So I find the opening of the jump ring. And then I just have to give it a little bit of a twist. There it is. And then all I'm going to do is grab my ring, hook that in, and then I just go back and twist it the other way. Okay, so I'm going to bring them back together. Some people say to take it a little bit further and back. And then what you will see is now I have a stitch marker with the little charm on it. Now, the second one, I'm going to use one of these, and this is another one that came from a necklace, and I'm going to need to have a jump ring, and I'm going to use the one that I've opened up already, and then all I have to do is use a charm. So I can either use a little card that we have that looks like that, or I can use a little heart that looks like that. So I think what I'm going to do, because you have to be careful that you don't want the charms to be too heavy. Neither one of these is too heavy, but I'm going to use the heart, and I'm going to show you why. Partly because on the other side of the heart, there's a little bit of texture. So there's texture on the ring and texture on the heart. I just think it goes together. So now I have to join one to the other. So first of all, I'm going to take my needle nose pliers and grab the ring. So there it is. I've got the ring. I am going to slip the charm on it. And then all I have to do is slip the ring on top of that. Now, there's a possibility when you do this that your jump ring isn't big enough. I've chosen one that's going to work. So now all I have to do, and this is always fun when you're on camera, I'm going to slip it. There we go. So I've got to grab that side and grab this side, and then I move them back towards each other and close them up. So there's my lovely stitch marker. I have the textured ring, I have the textured heart, and so that's going to be lovely to use. Once again, that's a nice large size. If I was going to be using sock yarn or something where I needed a small needle, I could use one of the smaller circles. So that's when you are attaching a charm to something that is a closed circle. My next stitch markers are lovely. You can make a lot of them. I'm just going to show you all of that. So what happens is, option one is you buy big jump rings. So you can get size 10mm, 12mm jump rings and just use them. I don't have any, and so what I did was I bought wire, and you can get different gauges of wire. So usually you need about a 16 gauge wire. I've used 18 in the past as well. You want to make sure your wire isn't too soft. So the idea for this is you take the wire and wrap it around something that is the same size. So you could use a knitting needle. You can buy a tool. I've been known to buy tools. So I'm going to get this out of the way. There is the tool that I'm using. It's designed to make jump rings. And so there's a larger size, a middle size, and then a smaller size. Now, I'm going to use 18 gauge wire just because it's easier to bend. And using the camera, I need to have something that's easier to bend. But you have to be careful. The bead that we're going to attach will help it stay firm. But I must admit the 16 gauge wire is probably a little bit better. I like the 18 gauge. You can get all kinds of colors. So the idea is that you put the wire in and hold it tight. There we go. And then you wrap it around. And then you come up through the middle. And you wrap it around, come up through the middle. I think, there we go. And you just keep wrapping it around like that. And that is going to make a bunch of circles. So let me show you what I have already done. So I have made this little, it looks like a wire, which is what it is. And it's all bent around. And what you do is you then use what they're called nipper tools. So that's what they are. And they will cut the circles that you need. Now, the trick is, depending on which side you cut, depends on what it does, and you want them to match up. So there is a flat side, and there is a not flat side. So you want the flat side to happen. So I'm going to start here by just evening up the end of that and cutting it off. And then I want to have the same kind of side, so I turn it over, and then I'm going to cut that next part. Now what should happen, let's try that again. I'm going to cut that. There we go. And now I have a ring. Okay. And then I do the same thing again. So I'm going to come over here. Sometimes it's easier if you pull it apart a little bit. So I'm just going to turn this around and I'm going to cut in there. There we go. And there's another one. Okay, so it makes the circles and then you can work with those. All right, so let's go back to the ones that I've already done. And here they are. So those are done. And now my job is to find a bead that will work. Depending on the wire width will depend on what you can do. There's a bead. There's a different color of a bead. So, whoops, that one rolled right off. There we go. So I think I'm going to use the lighter one so you can see it easier. So all I have to do is grab those tools again and grab one of these. There we go. So I need one of the rings, one of the beads, and then I'm going to take that bead and I'm going to put it right on top of that ring. So if you had jump rings, you would just open them up and put the bead on. Now my job is to take this and go through. This is a little heavier than the other ones. So now I'm going to take that and do it there. And now I have a circle with the bead on it. There's the join, and that's what I need to cover with the bead. There's the bead. So my job is to move that bead around to the join, and then I have to glue it. So there's a little trick to that. The idea is you want to put the glue on the join and then move the bead around. So let's talk about glue. So this is called GS Hypo Cement, and it is used to make for bead stringing glue. It's for satin and silk cord, plastic, glass, metal, seals not, stays flexible, will not bond fingers, thank goodness, and it does all kinds of. The important part is that it will dry clear. Before we start gluing, we have to get a few things organized, and my suggestion is to make a number of these and then do all the gluing at one time, and I'll show you the trick to doing that. You need to come up with something. You can get some Tupperware, you can do something that's going to give you a flat surface. This may be difficult to see on the white, but it will allow you to put over a skewer. And the idea is that we are going to, once these are glued, we're going to slip that on there, and then we can place it like that, and that will let it dry. So that's the plan. I have made a couple more. So I've got ones with different colored beads so you can see what I'm doing. And what I'm going to do is glue, put it on the skewer, and then come back. I'm going to start gluing. I have three ones. This is the one that I made in front of you. These are two that I have made earlier. So I haven't glued them. And I have a dish of them that I keep that aren't glued, so then I can do all the gluing at one time. I've placed a piece of parchment paper on my board so that the glue doesn't stick. It doesn't stick to my important piece of Bristol board. It doesn't stick to anything, so it's good. Now the idea is I'm going to glue the join. I'm going to bring the bead to that join. I'm going to hold it for a second, and then I'm going to put it onto the skewer, and that's going to do what we need to do. So this glue has a very, very fine tip to it, which I really, really like. There we go. So you have to have enough. You need to bring the bead around. You want it right on the join. I'm going to let it hold for a minute, just for a little bit before, and then I'm going to take the skewer. The weight of the bead will help hold it down. So there's the first one on the skewer, and I'm going to move that aside. Now you can see that, I don't know if you can see, that I've dropped glue. So the glue keeps coming, which is why we want to do it. I can slide this way. I can grab the glue that's sitting there and use it so that I'm not wasting anything. And then I'm going to bring this around, sit it right there. There it is again. It's going to sit for a little minute. We're just going to let it sit. And then I'm going to slide it onto the skewer. I'm going to grab some more glue. You can see that there's glue on the end of this. So I'm just going to grab that glue that's there. I have to be careful not to have too much. I'm going to move the bead around. I'm going to hold it right there on the join. Now the nice thing is the glue will dry clear. And I just hold it there for a little bit. And then once it's settled a little bit, I'll put the skewer in, and then I'll bring the skewer across so you can see, and we've got our three. So they're going to sit and dry. The next thing we're going to make is a progress keeper, and these usually kind of hook on the front of your work, and so they don't have to be those circles, and you have to be able to move them. So the first thing we're going to use is what's called a lever back earring. Now you obviously don't want to be getting your best gold, but these open up and then it will hook onto your knitting, then you close it up and you go from there. We want to put some kind of charm on there. So we have to make a decision. So let's say we're going to use one of these charms. Now it has that jump ring already on it, so that's going to make life very easy. So let's do that first of all. Just like we did before, I'm going to need my 2 sets of needle nose pliers. I have to grab my jump ring and find out where the opening is, and it's right there. So I grab the other side. Oh my goodness, this is purple. And I give it that twist. So one goes forward, one goes back. And then I grab this part, and there's the hole, and I just have to hook that on there. By the way, if you want to make an earring, this is exactly what you would do. And then I'm going to grab it again, and then I'm going to go back. So move them back towards each other. Make sure we're in good shape. And then I close that. And there it is. So that would be a progress keeper. Would be easy to use, and we go from there. So there's one example of a progress keeper. Now another example of a progress keeper is when they use something that is called a lobster clasp. So it's very similar to the earring in that, as you can see, there's the hole. It needs to have a jump ring that goes through that. So let's try to do one that doesn't have a jump ring. So here is a little charm that's a butterfly. And I think we got 8 of those for $1.25. Wasn't too expensive. And so we're going to put that onto that lobster clasp, but we will need a jump ring first of all. So here is one of the jump rings that we used before that we opened up. So remember, you just take one plier forward and one plier backwards. So it's already open and ready to do its work. Alrighty, it's always fun when you got to grab things. There we go. So now I'm going to take the charm and put it on. Let's try that again. I'm going to take the charm and put it on, and then all I have to do is take the lobster clasp and put it on. Grab the hole, and then I just have to move the sides of the jump ring back towards each other and close that hole. And then there is a progress keeper with a butterfly. So I will hook this to my knitting and we can go from there. I just want to mention one thing about lobster clasps. That's what these are called. You have to be careful because sometimes you can get lobster clasps that are very small. And I have some progress keepers that I purchased that had this. This one I would say is almost too small. You're only going to be able to pick one piece of your yarn. This one's okay. I could gladly make another progress keeper with that. When you're buying your lobster clasps, just be sure that you don't make them too small because you want to be able to grab your yarn with them. And that will show you how far along you're doing in your knitting. Just to recap, let's take a look at the things we've done so far. So we've used a bulb pin and a charm from the craft store. So there's one. We used a bulb pin and a charm. And there's another stitch marker. We made circles. We used the circle from a necklace chain that we got at the craft store and a charm. And same thing, but this one is one that needed to have that jump ring. So that's there. Now, so these are stitch markers with beads made from wire. So that's what we did. So those are all the stitch markers. And now let's look at the progress keepers. So we made one using a lever back earring and a charm. And then the other one that we made was using a lobster clasp, a jump ring, and a charm.
Well, thanks for doing that today, Colleen. I'm sure that inspired some people out there.
Yes, so hope you like those progress keepers and stitch markers and that you'll have a good time making them on your own. Until next time,
You take care.